Yeah.
Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today, Christan Willis.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be talking to you, Michael. I can't wait.
Okay, perfect. Let's get right into it. I want to know this amazing woman behind all of this amazing food that we see, that people's tasted, who is, taking Atlanta by storm.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm a private chef here in Atlanta. I'm also a TV personality and brand ambassador. So I work a lot with people, families, brands, and kind of connecting food and lifestyle together, and just kind of like making this like harmonious, like just kind of synergy around food and life. And I think that's what I'm all about.
Nice. I love that. Where did this love for it come from? Especially this, your background, you have such a multicultural background. And then also there's the part with your father's business. And so let me know where for you did this type of like love for food start?
Absolutely. I believe my love for food started at an early age. I've always loved creating and using my hands. Definitely more of the artsy vibe. So I love to paint. So it kind of just goes hand in hand when it comes to food. Food has always been one of those things that's been a constant in my life. And so I really have just taken that from even age 15 all the way until, my adult years right now. But always tweaking it to like match my life and where I see this going. But it's always been like my first love. And I never knew I was going to get into this industry until I started to take it seriously in college.
Nice. So in college, what were you in college for at first?
So I studied journalism at Georgia State, which is crazy because I did my school news from middle school all the way to high school. So I was like, boom, this is what I want to do. I want to be a reporter. But then I started writing about food. And so that's where kind of like the food aspect kind of came to place. And my dad told me, he's like, well, if you don't know what you want to do, why don't you just go to culinary school? So I was like, okay, well, what about the timing? It's going to take an extra like 3 years. He's like, well, time is going to pass anyway, right? So I did it. I took his advice, like literally breezed through culinary school, did my internship at Disney. It was a wonderful experience. Came back to Atlanta, and that's when I started working in fine dining restaurants and really just like hit the ground running and started cooking in kitchens and just like really excelled. So it's just been super natural, and I love that.
Nice. I love that too.
Yeah.
In social media, you have all these like home chefs and you have these competitions, right? And then you have people
Yeah.
calling themselves, and then there's this debate if you're not, classically trained, if you're home trained. For
Yeah.
you, when someone can anyone call themselves a chef, or do you feel that there has to be like at least a certain time frame you've been doing it, where you've been doing it, not that just because you was in your mama's kitchen and your friends love you and you got a social media following that you can call yourself Chef Cox, like
You're right, right. There's such a fine line between what you're saying. But I will say this, no, you do not have to be classically trained to be a chef. But what you do have to have is that experience under your belt. Say you're working in a restaurant, you know how like, the line works, you know how the dish pit works, you know how like front of service, back of service, you know how that whole organization, and it's truly a brigade. So think about the army and how they work. So that's literally how that system works in the restaurant. So if you have that knowledge and you're passionate about the food industry and you know what you're talking about, then perfect.
yeah.
But say you're just like, I just love to cook. Grandma taught me. I'm a home cook, but I'm just gonna put chef whatever
Yeah.
behind your name. It's sometimes it's a little offensive. However, because people have really put in that grit, the dirt, the hours, like all those things that really make you a chef.
Yeah.
But to have that title chef, you have to be able to run a kitchen. So if I walk into any kitchen, I can still run it. Can these social media chefs do that? Probably not. So that's why I say it's a thin line. But no, I don't believe you have to, technically go to culinary school. You don't.
Nice. I love it. And I think it also helps with the expectations because if you have chef in your name, you take on private clients or you do anything, people are going to expect a certain level of you understand the dynamics of, sauces and the balancing. So it's like, hey, they're going to expect that from you. But if you don't have that and you have chef there, it's going to be kind of like, wait a minute, don't aren't you a chef? Why is this little, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
now I'm being managed.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny because like I watch what's going on in my community. So I mean, there's so much love in the South when it comes to chefs and just like chefs in general, we like pay attention to what everyone's doing. But yeah, I kind of like turn my nose up, kind of like look at some things like, okay, yeah, if you're just gonna present like
Yeah.
foil pans and you're calling that like, your presentation. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how far I'm gonna like believe you.
Nice.
But no, there's some like aspects that you have to know, and some, people want to have like credibility towards their name too. So that's how I believe it. Yeah.
Credibility. How did you build up your credibility to such a degree where you've been featured on in other media outlets, and your personality and brand ambassador, which is a dream for a lot of people. That's why they go to social media, and the first thing you see most people, I'm like, why do you have a seasoning out already? Like, no offense, but I just
Yeah.
like, why do you have a sauce? What's the shelf life on these things?
Oh my goodness. Right, right. You never know. You never know. People are cooking out of their, kitchens and then bringing it to people's homes. It's like, wait, are you certified to do that yet?
Yeah.
I will say for credibility for me, it was literally learning the basics and building that foundation. So yes, I started in kitchens at 15, even though I wasn't classically trained yet, I still knew what I was doing and just like took that knowledge from other people and like made it my own. But really just like, going through that journey and really starting at the bottom. But now I'm kind of at a point where I can be very flexible in what I do with food. But a lot of people think like, oh yeah, because what you look like on social media, you don't really know what you're talking about. But if you look back, I'm credited, I've done my time. I've definitely worked with a lot of chefs and collaborated with some of the best chefs in the South. So I do have a good backing behind me.
Nice. I love that. You talked about when you mentioned that people kind of will look at you and think like, oh, well, maybe she's just gorgeous, and it's just like, you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
you hear that a lot about like when it comes to women in this industry, especially when it
right.
comes to chefs, executive chefs, restaurateurs. How has your experience been not only but a woman of color, but also biracial? So it's like they can't put you really in a box because it's easier to put you in a box if it's like, oh, we can put her as the black chef, but then it's like, wait, but no, she's also they're Southeast Asian, there's Pacific Islanders. It's like, well, I'm gonna actually, if I come with a fusion, I really am the fusion that's coming to the table, and I'm not just,
Right.
making fusion happen.
Absolutely. I would say the strongest argument just as a woman, but also a woman of color, is because I never wanted to be put in a box. I always stood out. I always wanted to try to fit in when I was little. But just knowing like how beautiful it really is just to stand out and be as, authentic as you can and be very unique. And kind of just like running with it. And I tell a lot of young chefs, like, yes, just because you love Southern food or just because you love California coastal food, like that's great, but also make yourself very, very diverse and make yourself stand out from all the others because that's what's really going to push you and to excel you into your future. And I've had to learn that, adversity in so many different ways and take a lot of L's, but a lot of like, I want to say like humbling moments. But it's really just been a part of my journey personally. So speaking of being a woman in the kitchen, yeah, I've had some tough times to where I had to like stand on my own or even just leave a job just because, the male domination in the chef industry was so like intense. But I did it as, a pride thing for me, but
Mhm.
also as a woman in color, you don't want to just take anything. Like now we're at a point where this is our time, especially like year of the woman. I mean, this is almost like a decade of the women right now. We are standing up, we're being very forceful, and we know exactly what we want. And it's such just a beautiful time for me, just to really excel and take this and push boundaries, like open doors for other people, lead by example. And I think that's really what I would like to do with that.
Nice. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Advice
Yeah.
to give to other women that were in your shoes. It's hard sometimes because some
Yeah.
people don't have the luxury to quit a job, or they feel like they don't need to, they can't speak up for themselves, and it's just it's a catch-22. I tell people the hardest thing to be in this world is a woman. Then to add being a black woman on top of that, that's the hardest thing to do in this universe, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you say something, you're aggressive. If you don't say something, why did she speak up? I'm like, well, what? I'm like, I'm happy I'm a guy because I just I don't have to think that much. Yeah.
Stress, but I think we walk into doors already know we're going to have to work 10 times harder, even 100 times harder. So we already have that in the back of our heads, and we already know, like, okay, yes, it actually might go to somebody else first. Maybe it's just not our time yet, or maybe they just don't see it in us. But what I would like to say is that, just keep pushing and take those risks, because that's exactly what I'm doing right now, taking the risk. And, I get a lot of no's. And that one time I do get a yes, it ends up being the right time. So just keep pushing and keep trying. Failure is never a fail.
Nice. What as a private chef, right? What does a normal day look like for you, especially
Okay.
a normal day when you have
Yeah.
a event the day of?
Okay, normal day. Let me walk you through it.
Yeah,
So,
through it.
okay, prior to the event, you're already going to have your menu curated. And so usually that takes like a good week or so just to kind of converse with the client and see exactly what they're looking for. I usually put my own spin on it. I will take the request, but I will also elevate it in the way I see necessary. And, based on like what type of party is this? Is this a bachelorette? Is this a dinner party for two? Is this like, hey, we're just wanting to have fun and just is it a plated dinner, or is it, are we doing tapas? So really having fun with that. I start my day off going to the grocery store, the market, farmer's market, if possible, because you want to get those organic ingredients.
Yeah.
And I will say that is the tedious part, because running through stores, multiple stores that people don't see you do is insane. Like, I mean, as a chef, you're probably going to like 4 or 5. So that's taking up a lot of time. But once you gather all those ingredients, then you just want to go ahead and prep your food. So that prep could be 2 days of prep, 1 day of prep. And what I like to do is get all my sauces done. I like to get all my cuts done. I like to braise my meat or marinate whatever protein I'm using. And the day of the event, okay, so that's going to be a lot of unloading, loading your car, and kind of packaging and transporting food. That's also a very tedious part, because you have to be super careful in what you're doing,
Yeah.
especially if it's hot food, making sure your hot box is ready. So it is a very labor intensive job that a lot of people don't know about. So once you arrive to your event, that's where actually all the magic happens. That's when the guests start to see exactly what you're doing, but you have to be super laser focused on what you do. And so I always have a prep sheet. I'm always super organized. I know exactly where I'm going to put things once I get the lay of the land. And then you just go, you work on your appetizers first, you get the things that you need to be ready and kind of simmering. So I'm always turning on the oven the first thing I do when I walk into someone's house. I'm greeting guests, but I'm also, paying attention to the food. So it's a very organized process. Not many people can walk into people's homes and do that and also have a smile on your face and be very personable. So it's something I've had to really learn and kind of just like adapt really fast.
Nice. I love that. I will
Yeah.
tell people two things when it comes
Yeah.
to you as a private chef. People should understand one, make sure they're actually paying the prices for you, because all this gas, stores, and food,
Yep.
cut corners, because you still need to, and then two, you probably
Yeah.
don't, they need to know what they want, because you don't need no added
Hmm.
extra stress. If you're doing 3 weeks,
Oh,
I don't need, I need you to know exactly what you want.
right.
Change your mind 3 days before the event. Don't-
No, that happens. And I mean, it even happens on like on the chef side too. Like sometimes we have to change things.
yeah.
Maybe something's not seasonal, maybe we can't get that ingredient. But just kind of being flexible, because that's the best part about being a private chef or personal chef, is you have to have that flexibility to adapt and to change. And if you can't think on your feet, then that's the wrong profession for you, in my opinion. But things go wrong. You just try to, keep the ball rolling, but especially what you're talking about with prices, like, yes, it's the part that they don't see is the most like important part that also takes a lot of time. So you're already putting in 10 hours before the event starts, in my opinion. Yeah.
Nice. That
Yeah.
I always like people to be able to get something like more jewels from you. Like, I love everyone to be able to learn from you. And when it comes to pricing, how can chefs,
Okay.
private caterers set pricing to make sure it's profitable for them as well, but they're also being economically
Right.
advantage, I would say, ostentatious for the client as well too,
Okay.
because there's a thin line. You don't know, like, how do you start to really understand how to budget to keep that account, get the account, and make sure they don't choose someone over you without sacrificing
Wow.
your own profits?
Take it from me, it's trial and error, honestly. There were times where I was just like cutting too close to my margins and I wasn't making a profit for the amount of time and effort and food quality that I was delivering. But know your place in your field. I would say that. Like if you're a beginner, then you're going to have to go through those bruises and you can't charge what somebody has been putting 10, 15, 20 years into. Those can't be your prices. But some people have that mindset that I'm just going to start at the top. And you really don't. You have to really know your clientele and your demographic. And once you figure out that niche, because that's a very specific thing
Mhm.
for who you're cooking for. But also base it off, okay, what have I done in the past? And okay, did you go to school? How long were you in the restaurant if you didn't go to school? So kind of use what you have in your background and, present that on the forefront of your prices. Make yourself worth the while for your guests or your clients.
I like
Yeah,
that. People in the
yeah.
back need to hear that because social media, someone gets one good client and their prices are up tomorrow. You're like, wait a minute. If y'all
But
that
I
crazy.
will agree with that though. I will agree with that. In the time that we're in right now, your prices should be going up,
Yeah.
especially like thinking about food costs. Like, now it's just super expensive to get seafood, especially if you're inland, like the city of Atlanta, it's just ridiculous. And also like inflation with COVID and,
Yeah.
just like how long it takes to get things now, especially things in season or if it's not in season. So your prices should be matching exactly what you're, profiting and what you want to go get. But also just know your worth.
Yeah.
I will even say like take it till you make it sometimes, but don't go overboard with it.
Yeah.
But
Go
you
overboard.
know,
Because I
yeah,
swear, how many people use, social media and go, prices
right,
yesterday? It was like, wow, but you started yesterday. What happened in
right,
24 hours then?
right. This is not making sense. Exactly. But no, but if you think this is going to be a long-term career for you, then you have to start somewhere and then you have to increase as you go up. Figure out what that day rate is going to ideally look for you. And then base everything else around it.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
10 minutes left, so I'll have a couple more questions.
All right. All right.
Um, If someone asked me to describe you as a chef, right? Describe what the feeling is, what the vibe, what can I expect on this
Oh,
spread of things? What would I tell them?
oh my gosh. Dynamic for one. There's nothing that I can't cook. I have preferences, but I would say I'm a very dynamic chef. I'm very swift in the kitchen. My flavors are always on point. So definitely, you're never going to go wrong with that. But the fact that I can be super flexible, but dynamic is my favorite word to describe that.
Nice. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Being so
Mhm.
dynamic, have
Mhm.
you ever had a moment in your career where you had to pivot to a point where you're just like, it showed you could do anything, that like it was one of those horror stories where you thought like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but you made it out.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me tell you this quick story. I'm cooking for a director who's here filming a show. I'm sorry, a movie, and they're there for like maybe like 2, 3 months. I got paired with the director, and we're cooking in a hotel. And okay, we go through the menu. He's like, "Listen, this is what I eat. I really want to eat clean. We're doing lunch and dinner, and maybe a couple snacks here and there." And I'm like, "Perfect, got you." I'm prepping in his kitchen. Sometimes I'm bringing things already ready. But when I arrived into the hotel that I was cooking at, it's a small kitchenette. And this was a moment where I was like, okay, I was not prepared for this. I thought we kind of had like, oh yeah, there's a kitchen, you'll have a stove, you'll have all these great things, space. When I tell you, I walked in and it was literally a box. And I went to the left was the stove and to the right was the fridge. And that's all I had to work with. And maybe like a mini sink. That's when I knew I was like, okay, if I can execute a 5-star meal in this little box, then I'm good.
Yeah.
So really just pushing that. And like once I did that, I was like, oh, I can cook anywhere now. I can cook outside. I can cook in this hotel. I can cook, put me in any scenario and I can still do my thing.
Great. I love to hear
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
He's
Which
like, well,
was wild. It was wild. I was like, not ready for that. But like when you have a client that you really want to please and you really want to put your best foot forward, you'll make it happen. You'll find a way.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. You
Yeah.
know, you're also a personality and a brand ambassador. Can you enlighten me a little bit more on some of your personality work and some of the brands you're an ambassador for, and even how you extended into those realms as well with everything else you got going on?
Wow, absolutely. I think just being a part of food, and like I told you, food was just a constant for me. Whatever I do, the center is always going to be food, right? So yeah, I love to be on camera, but I'm going to make it about food.
Yeah,
So even working with brands, if it's a beer company, okay, how can I add some food elements to that beer to really show like the combination and making sure that people would still like enjoy it. So knowing how to really just pinpoint exactly what the brand is and just putting little twists on it, making it very unique to you. I think that's really been the best part for me. And not having to necessarily like go to a restaurant and just like slave away in the kitchen and just be like, super hot and just like exhausted because the kitchen is very, very, tough for a lot of people until you get used to it. So kind of stepping out to that element, showing like, yes, you can be a chef, but you can also do so many different things. And I love what I'm seeing with food right now.
Nice. I love that. Last two questions. One,
Okay.
the first one, what does self-care look like for you and how do you do that? Because your jobs are so demanding physically, mentally,
Yes.
emotionally. So how do you take care of yourself
Yes.
at the
Wow. Okay. I am a huge fan of self-care, and I think I've always been that. So I was a cheerleader for such a long time. So like making sure I'm presentable. Even my mom, she's always like super aware of like the little things. And I think just like having that background and really just like taking pride in your appearance just because you're a chef, but it's also external and internal as well. Yeah, those long 70-hour weeks that some people are doing in the kitchen, like why don't you treat yourself to a massage? It's okay to do those things. And I think right now, like I'm living it up and doing it. Like I will always get a massage. I will always like take care of the things I need to. But yeah, you can be very feminine, but also be, a badass chef in the kitchen as well. And so you can play those two roles, especially as a woman. Men too, when I see them taking care of their face and like really taking care of their hair, their beard, I was like, you know what? Those are great things. Like those are really things that like people should take pride in. So
Nice. I love that. Couldn't agree
yeah.
more. Last,
Right,
last
right.
question. Then we're done. You can get back to your day. Uh, what's next for you in 2023 and beyond?
Wow, 2023 is looking good. I'm super excited. I've got a lot of great things in the works. I'm appearing on a show for Netflix. The new title is called Pressure Cooker. So it's a really exciting time. We're 11 chefs. So we're living in a house together. So think Big Brother, Top Chef. We're competing. There's a lot of surprise elements with that. It's not your typical cooking show. So I think it's going to take people for like a whirlwind when they watch it, but also a little bit of drama and some fun and some, little spicy elements, but overall a good feeling. So I'm excited to hit the ground running with that at the top of the year. So I've been talking about a lot of things like with brand ambassadorships for other communities, especially mine in Atlanta. So Big Brother, Big Sister is super huge here. So to be a part of their ambassador program is like amazing because I love to give back any way I can. And then of course, another brand ambassadorship with a lifestyle brand would just be key, a long-term contract with that. That would definitely make me happy. But also like doing these food festivals and cooking demos and things that I'm really, really attached to, and then communicating with the community and also getting them excited about food. So right now I'm just open to everything, but I'm super excited.
Thank you. Nice. Well, that's
Yeah.
all I have for today. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed myself. I always hope the other person had as well too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.